And beginning in three, two, one. We're on.
Good afternoon, evening, good morning, Ohio gozaimasu, wherever you are, wherever you're listening. Dr. Jeff here with my good friend and esteemed colleague, Jim Case in Adventures in Truth podcast. Hey, Jim, how's it going?
Good, Jeff. How are you? Good to see you. Great to be here. Another great day to dive into some amazing, fun, forward-moving topics. Looking forward to where we go today.
Well, we're going to dive in today in just this small little idea or notion. And once again, in my humble opinion, showing up as brave, daring, and bold, we're going to try to tackle this issue of what makes us a better human being, or what is it to be a better human being, or why would we think that one year after another, how do we evaluate what better is or what better looks like? So not that we're actually claiming to know the answer, but we're bold and daring enough to say, hey, let's at least try to have an intelligent discussion about it and see if we can come up with some notions or ideas in our podcast today to perhaps dispel old belief systems or old ways of evaluating and maybe come up with some new ways or just some agreed upon ways. So what does that sound like to you, Jim, as far as a topic and being bold and daring and taking on something that most people would probably shy away from or avoid altogether?
Well, it really does. It addresses a really core thing, a core issue in the whole idea of consciousness and transformation and we go on we're all each on these individual journeys. I know for myself each day looking for how do I move the needle? Where am I going to go? How do I want to answer the questions that have been burning for me for 6 months or for a year or for my life? I love the idea of being able to sort of quantify how we show up. I don't think it's about judgment. I don't think it's about negative assessment. I think it's about finding the words and the descriptions and the feelings of what that progress looks and feels like.
When you were using the example of moving the needle, this is what I was thinking of, is the kind of a needle on a device that would measure no improvement. This is the red zone of unacceptable behaviors and way you're living your life. This would be the yellow zone of better than red, but still not really quality. And then you have the green zone, and then, you're doing really marvelous. Is that kind of what you were talking about as far as moving the needle? This being the needle of an instrument, as opposed to like the needle of a record or the needle in a haystack? Or I'm trying to resonate with your needle right now so that we can understand what the heck moving it means.
And actually a really good question, because once you define the needle wasn't it. Because at least in that format, because all of those then require an assessment or judgment of, instead of just where am I and where do I want to be. There's a core belief, there's a core foundational thing, particularly I know in like law of attraction, that is not about putting a lot of effort or energy into what you don't want, but putting all of your energy into what you do want. And what that means to me is that you don't spend time hashing as little time as possible hashing problems and talking about negative aspects, talking about things that aren't working, using our energy and our time to actually focus on where am I at the moment, where do I want to be, and what steps can I take to move that forward. So, and again, I almost used the needle analogy again to move that needle forward. So I guess for me, I got to find a different analogy, because the needle one just doesn't seem to work.
Okay. Well, while you're working on coming up with another analogy, because that really is what we're trying to do, is who are we to say what better is? And I don't just mean you and I right now in this podcast, but we as individuals, we as a society, we as whatever humans, we're going to have to try to define what that might look like. What I'd like to do right now is just go back and look classically or historically at some of what that might look like. And again, we could go anywhere and use anything to start with, but I know that some of the traditional or accepted Jewish practices have this understanding that somewhere around the age 50, that enlightenment occurs with regard to a spiritual awakening or a spiritual understanding. And that doesn't mean that if you're not 50, you got to wait till the day 50 to, wake up and experience this. It's an average kind of a thing. And so that's one example of what better might look like, is having some idea that I'm moving away from so much reliance and dependence for survival on the physical, and I'm open more to the metaphysical or even the complete spiritual, an energetic experience more than a ham sandwich or a roof over my head or a new car or something like that. So in some ways, there's this notion of different stages of better, and one stage would be I'm really kind of in the physical, and so the more education I get, the more ability I'll have to make an income, the more physical possessions I'll be able to buy, the more I'll be able to provide for my family. I mean, you can really do super well in that milieu or that venue, but that's really not that's still in stage one in terms of a human development, that you never move past that. And there's a lot of people that will spend their whole life with the right handbag, the right accessories, the right house, the right group of friends, the right cosmetic surgeries, or any of these sorts of things, the right boat, the right airplane, all those kinds of physical things that it looks like you're doing better, but you're really still playing the same game. Mm-hmm. So if we could look at perhaps our discussion grouped in, at least right now in the beginning part of our discussion, who the heck knows where we'll go or where we'll wind up, but at least for a model, if we have this model of the physical, which would be all those things I just described, and then the next phase or stage would be the corporate or the team or the community, that we could, instead of using fossil fuels, let's move toward sustainable energies and non-polluting ways of producing food and energy, and moving forward with more, homes that last 100 years rather than 30 years, that sort of thing. And you can really do well with a community focus or an other focus, but it's really just a graduated or more involved step than stage one. It's just a more efficient way, and it looks kinder, greener, more gentle, more human, because we're sharing, and it's not so much about us. So we're growing toward an other focus and not so much a self focus. So that might be another way that we could take a look at how we're living our lives, is how much about what we're doing with regard to our time and resources is about us and our core family and our core friends, and how much of it is about helping our neighbor or helping people we don't even know, but we know need our help, and we have an excess, so we're wanting to share our excesses, and we're building schools to train people. We're providing technologies so that they can share in the technology explosion. So that would take us to step two or stage two. And then stage three might look like I really have a spiritual awakening to where I realize, as you and I discussed a bit before our podcast today, none of this matters. We're here observing, we're here having experience, and you can go anywhere with that. But as you become more aware and awake that our planet isn't even going to exist at some point, the sun will continue to grow in size and at some point completely engulfs this planet. Won't happen in your lifetime or my lifetime, but that is the path we believe that all of this is headed toward. So does anything that we're doing right now on this planet really matter? as far as community, government, social programs? No, because it all goes away. But in the experience that we're having of going from it's all about me and I got to protect mine and we have limited resources, so I got to, take what I can get and too bad for you. I think we've moved out of that. We're moving as a planet. I believe human beings are moving out of that model toward less borders or fewer borders or open borders and more sharing. But we still have an awful long way to go to where we realize that really even that doesn't matter so much, that we're really here to truly just promote love and understanding and understand all this energy that's going through us and around us and is in the food that we eat, is in the water that we drink, that it's all an energetic expression that not too many people are resonating there and operating in that place, that we're still caught up in getting older and being concerned with physical appearance, or still the physical keeps showing up. And, even disease works into that model where it's like we're programmed that we believe that as we age, each year that we go around the sun one more time, we're programmed that we're supposed to get older, and therefore our bodies are supposed to break down and we're supposed to be more feeble and at some point become helpless and wind up in the hospital and we die. I mean, that's the program that we're operating under. That really isn't true. It does not have to be that way. There are sustainable societies that live well beyond 100 and they don't die in the hospital, and their bodies just expire, but they're not cancer ridden. They don't have all of these other issues that we're dealing with. And right now I feel like I've kind of went down a rabbit hole, but I want to just lay out these 3 ideas of a better person starts out in the physical world and realizes that does not provide sustainable gratitude or gratification. You can have everything in the world, but that just doesn't make you feel good at the end of the day. And then you can give everything away. If you accumulate everything in the world and then you give it all away, you're still operating in the physical domain. You're still operating in atoms and molecules. But if you move into the spiritual and you realize that this is an energy expression, this is an energy experience, and energy can't be created or destroyed, it just shifts, it just changes. And we no longer need to worry so much or be so concerned about the physical. We still have physical bodies and we're living these physical lives, but our emotions don't have to be negative where we're concerned about the physical so much, when we shift into more of a focus and become better human beings by realizing that truly the things that we think matter don't, and that there are far better ways of experiencing all of this amazing energy that's around us. That might be a way, if we could find a way to measure that or talk about that or express how you're moving toward that, where we might shape our podcast and our discussion today. Okay, I'm turning the fire hose off. Now we can take a look at
I'm so
all of that.
Wet now, okay? No. Good stuff. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to start with a story, and tie back to what the topic is here. It's all part of the story, but this actually has occurred over the last couple of days. So as I'm driving, and for those of you who don't know, I drive Lyft periodically, consistently, but that's one of the things that I do. And anyway, it's been an amazing tool for helping me to see aspects of myself, and aspects of my engagement with the world and all that kind of stuff. But one of the key themes that's been up for me a lot is I get to a point in the day, or in the course of driving, where I start to get less gracious, let's say. I can get pretty darn nasty behind the wheel of my car. And I'm not nasty in the sense that I don't get aggressive and, drive people off the road. I just, in sometimes I get frustrated when you drive a lot. You can get really frustrated with the experience of how other people drive. But I'm also very aware of all of the what I would call reflection points, meaning that all of it is reflecting back to me how I am being or responding with myself and in myself. And so there are times that my language gets very colorful. There are times that I'm really annoyed with how somebody else is doing their thing. And then I find myself saying, why does it matter? Why do you care if this person doesn't drive the way you do? Why do you care that they don't know how to merge? Why do you care that people drive too slow at times? Why does it matter? Why am I judging their behavior and deciding that it's not okay? And so I've been playing with this idea of what if I changed that approach? What if I, instead of having a pop off reaction, if I'm going to have a pop off reaction, make it a positive one. So if I'm getting ready to call somebody a nasty word while I'm yelling at them because they don't know how to merge, that maybe I could acknowledge that. I could say, hey, thank you for showing up in my path. Thank you for, or just sending love, just being in a moment and going, yeah, no, I'm not going to choose that. I'm just going to try. I'm just going to thank you, love you, appreciate you. Thanks for being there, and not make it anything specific. But the point of the story and the reason for sharing it is because I had a really profound impact. It had a profound impact on me today. Um, because I noticed that as other aspects of my life may not be moving in the fashion that I think it should be, it sets up a course of frustration that sort of lingers in my field. And so the driving is a great place to sort of vent that frustration, even though it has nothing to do with what I may be upset or frustrated with. So I'm telling the story as a way of bringing it back around to the way that you know better is how you feel. The way that you can tap into where am I in the scheme of things is how do I feel?
Mm-hmm.
First off, how do I feel about me? How do I feel about me in the world? How do I feel about me in my relationships? Am I showing up? Am I, it's assessment. I call it, for me, sometimes it's doing inventory. It's not, there's no judgment about it. It's just like, where's this at? Where's this at? I want to know where I am in relation to the things that are important to me. So that's been an evolution for a very long time because, like you talked about, at the beginning, you think it's all about money, you think it's all about acquiring things, and so we mold a personality largely based on what we've been trained to do, what we have been entrained to do since the minute we came out of the womb, which is to be a productive member of society, is to be uh, to have a focus and goals, and to have to go through the process of getting an education and then getting a career and then working that career and then coming to a point of retirement. I had, side funny note, I had a gentleman probably in his late 60s, maybe even early 70s. I think he just hit 70 actually, now that I remember. But looked like he was some kind of a construction guy or somebody who did some physical work. He was wearing a pair of bibs and looked like he was working. And he gets in the car and, we exchange pleasantries. And then as we're driving away, he says, "Is this your only gig?" And I said, "Yeah, currently this is how I make my money." He said, "Oh, are you going to be able to retire on it?" And I went, "Wow, that's a really odd question." And I said, "No, I know, but," and I had to sit with it for a second because I thought, what a strangely, oddly personal question that I've never heard anybody ask before about my retirement. And I said, and it took me about 2 or 3 minutes of sitting with it. And I said, it really doesn't have a retirement plan, but I don't think much does these days. It doesn't appear that our society is structured that way anymore. And he said, "Yeah, I guess you're right. I just had 2 rotator cuff surgeries and I lost my job because I had to go get these surgeries. And so I'm not doing what I was doing before." And it was just such an interesting little dialogue about measurement, measuring if this thing is going to take me into the end of my life, as opposed to, is what I'm doing bringing me joy? Is what I'm doing filling me enough that I have more than enough energy and time and desire to make the world a better place, because I want my inner world to be reflected in my outer world. I want the outer world to be in peace and harmony and all those good things.
Right, right.
But if it ain't happening here, I can go beat that drum all day long. And in the end, I may affect some change, but it's not going to be stable, and it's certainly not going to necessarily sustain, because I'm not building it with anything of my energy. I'm building it with words and thoughts and ideas, and not energy, not who I am projecting into the world. So if what we're seeing in the world is this massive torment and confusion, it's because everybody feels some level of torment and confusion. It's not one person. It's not one person doing it. Somebody may be stimulating that, but the thing is, the stimulation is important, because how else are we going to identify how we're doing? To your point, are we getting better? Are we evolving? Are we, we're always evolving, we're always growing, but our perspective of that is what I think screws us up.
Right. Like, I like your example, and it reminds me of a book that I read not long ago, within the last decade anyway. It was called Human 2.0, and they were referencing the ways that employers and employees interact with each other, and what drives somebody to have a particular job. And they use 3 different models of employment. Version number 1 is, I have a job, and any job is better than no job. And there was a time when perhaps this man that you gave a ride to has seen all 3 of these models unfold, but he comes from model number 1. Any job is better than no job. And then, and there was a time when, like the skyscrapers in New York City were being built, and you had these guys eating lunch sitting 400 feet up off the ground, and they're sitting on a steel girder with their lunchbox, and life is grand, and they watch their buddy fall off, and oh well, I still got my job. Or people that would work in some kind of a butcher, a chicken ranch or something, and they're throwing all these chickens into this grinder thing or whatever. I mean, just jobs that you would just, wow, it's amazing that somebody actually does that. Mm-hmm. And they're operating in the, hey, I have a job. It allows me to buy food and put a roof over my head, and that's good enough. Yeah. And then moving it up a notch to, what I do is important to me, so that I need some skill, training, education, a little bit of luck, and I can get a job that suits me better. And so how much I make is one of the driving factors in my choice of a job or a career or an occupation. So you have how much you make and what you're doing as factors that didn't exist in model number 1, which was just, I have a job. Mm-hmm. I have something, and something's better than nothing. So model 2.0 is, how much do you make, and is what you're doing giving you any satisfaction? And where we are today, that the company Best Buy uses an employing strategy of who you're working with, what you're marketing or selling, as well as, does the job afford you to live the life you want to live? Not with the money that you get from it, but does your shift, does the time of day, do the number of hours you're working, do you have weekends off? Do you have, if you're a night person, do you have time to spend with your family? So it's like there's now 4 criteria, and it isn't money that's driving it any longer. And it's not even, I have a job, that's even gets on the equation any longer. Mm-hmm. So what seems to be most important to employees that are working for Best Buy is not how much are they getting paid, and not even, is what I'm doing good for the planet or good for me or good for society, but it's the people they're working with and the schedule that they're able to work out with the people that they're working with. And then comes how much they're making, and then comes, what am I doing that actually makes me happy or not? So really fascinating that they've tracked through exit strategies, or they've tracked through different surveys, people that are evolving, that this guy that you picked up in the ride you gave or provided was, he's a dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
And the 20-year-olds that you're picking up, or the 25-year-olds that you're picking up, they're not thinking retirement. They're not thinking 401k. They're not thinking that they need a turbo Porsche in their garage. They don't care about that anymore. So to me, people aren't even showing up in model number one so much anymore on the planet, that even young kids and babies have already seemed to evolve past the physical. Yeah, maybe they want their phone. That's important to them. But it even isn't so much about the phone itself as what the phone allows them to do.
Yeah.
But it's just fascinating to me that we couldn't use somebody in their 60s or 70s or 80s to help us define what evolving looks like, or are we becoming better, because they can't even see it. In our discussion earlier today before our podcast, we were talking about maybe we can't even see what we don't know that we can't see, or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know yet.
But it is encouraging to me to interact with young adults that really are not so tied up in the first phase or the first model of the physical. Just isn't that important to them anymore. And they are concerned about society at large. They are concerned about the planet at large. They are concerned about community. They are oriented towards sharing, and not so much about, let me have all the treasure for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And as they get older, I think they'll make a natural shift into that third stage of a spiritual awakening or awareness, that really the physical doesn't matter so much. And we're here to grow toward love and understanding and compassion, and just happiness, just joy. Joy because it's available. Joy because I'm actually here on the planet. I can go to the seashore and I can make footsteps in the sand. And I couldn't do that in a completely bodiless form. I could not make footsteps in the sand. I couldn't feel the moisture on the bottom of my skin. And apparently that has value. And that's why we come here to the planet, to actually have that experience that we could not have if we didn't incarnate and come and do this.
Well, that's the whole, we've talked about this before. To me, that's what it is. We're here for the experience. End of sentence, no further words, just we're here for experience. And so if that is the foundation, I was thinking as you were talking, because I remember having conversations with my parents when I was 14, 15 years old, the get a job conversation, and they were very much about, just get a job. And I'm like, no, I don't just want a job. I want something that I'm going to enjoy. I want something that's going to engage me. I want something that's going to create a good feeling. It's somewhere I want to be, something I want to get into. Well, just go get a job anywhere. No, I'm not going to go get a job anywhere. I won't stay there, because if I go do that, all it's going to take is 1 or 2 days of the people I don't like, or the whatever it is that isn't serving my process or what I feel about in my life. And this was 15, 16 years old. I couldn't do it. Couldn't make myself do it, and wouldn't make myself do it. I'd rather go without than to subject myself to that, which is kind of interesting. But that carried on even further to conversation I had with my parents when I decided to, because after I left home, I had to drop out of high school because of the circumstances of the time. So I ended up getting a GED and going back to go to college. And when I approached them about doing that, I said, so now we need to talk about this. Here's the deal. I'm doing this for the experience. I'm not doing this for grades. I'm not doing this, I'm doing it for the experience. I'm going to do the work. I'm applying myself. I'm going to school, but understand that I'm there to experience the entire experience. I'm not there to get a grade. And I want to be clear about that from the get-go, because if you think I'm going to harp on myself day in and day out about my grades, that's not going to happen. Because I didn't see the importance. Now, could my life have moved a different course? I have no freaking clue, and I don't care, because at that stage of my life, that was the thing that, you do what you can from where you are with what you have. That's what was in my field of awareness. That was in my intention. That's what I wanted to do. So that's what I pursued. And that's been sort of the whole process of my life. And it's funny because there's a part of my mind that wants to talk about that in a way that's, well, if you had, you might be somewhere else. You might be having money saved for retirement. You might be, you might be. But the truth of the matter is I was never there. It wasn't like I saw it and went, yeah, no, I don't want that. It wasn't, as we talked about before, it wasn't on the menu. It wasn't in my selection box. But again, I think the thing that has to be really talked about, and I'm going to use a concept we talked about in Higher Brain Living originally, which was the tipping point. They talk about, he talks about, I'm trying to remember I think it was the Enlightenment or something. I can't remember what the big shift was that came in Europe, but apparently that shift occurred. It was after the I think after the
You thinking of Crusades?
No, it wasn't the Crusades. So it was after the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
There was a period called the Great Enlightenment or the Enlightenment or something like that. And that shift in human consciousness was achieved by approximately 1,000 people, meaning that the energy of these people who came together in this grand purpose of shifting human experience had enough momentum and energy and had done enough work for themselves in moving this process forward that tipping point was achieved, and it changed the course of where things had been prior to that. And so it brought on a whole new energy of possibilities that didn't exist before in that very strongly structured, limited Victorian and or not Victorian, but pre-industrial revolution time. So the idea is that the individuals work on themselves, and as they do that, as they come into greater and greater understanding and expansion and more joy and connection to love, those people connect under a common desire for change, and as that momentum builds, they bring about that change because they embody the energy of the change. So there's another expression that's used in again in law of attraction, that is one who is connected is 1,000 times more powerful than 1,000 unconnected people. And the same, it's all tied to the same idea that how we get better, how better happens. I mean, we're calling it better, but it's probably, the idea is more evolutionary. The idea is more that there is growth and expansion, I think, is what we're saying when we're saying better. That there is evolution, there's growth, there's expansion in all of the things that we deem as significant or important. So love and joy and passion and purpose and things like that. So it's hard for me to talk in broader spectrum because it seems that my focus in this life is about getting people to recognize the importance that the individual carries in the greater scheme of things, and that too many times we lose our connection to understanding that the change has to start here. It has to start inside and has to be then reflected from inside to outside, and then being able to bring others from wherever they are to find that internal thing, so that when they look, they're seeing the same thing. And then the language becomes common. The common as in not common as in base, common as in same, speaking the same language, having the same concepts and ideas and being able to connect those things. But again, individually, we bring such uniqueness to the table that in a broad stroke, we could be focused in that direction, but each of us brings something that helps to make that momentum even stronger and greater and more powerful, because we're sharing energy and information. So becoming better becomes an evolutionary process that goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 10 to 20 to 100, and being able to stand, being able to stand in that, to me, is where we find better. Does that make sense?
I followed you through that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Sometimes I don't follow me through it. So,
Well, I find, like you, when you were describing, I think if I could quote you, you were saying that the change has to start internally rather than externally, or it has to start within you rather than come from others in your life. And I find that if I can get people to use as a mantra and tell it to themselves until it just becomes their new core identity, that I am whole, I am complete, and I lack for nothing. And if you can run that program just till it just makes you giddy because you believe it and it becomes your truth, there's no longer anything that you're looking for outside yourself. And what does show up, then you actually have the capacity to laugh with it, dance with it, play with it, celebrate with it.
whatever it is.
Because it's a frosting rather than the cake. It's the extra rather than just what is enough. But most people are far, far, far from that kind of a core program. And we're taught that, as babies, we don't have the ability to self-gratify, self-sustain, self-love, self-accept. Good parenting results in someone learning that in their youth, and then being able to go from a state of dependency in the world to independent as a teenager and a young adult, back to an interdependent state when they begin to solicit relationship and want a partner. But we have this idea, and this is one of the core truths that I believe is a lie, not a truth, this idea that you complete me.
Oh,
This idea that there's a soulmate out there that's somehow going to walk into my life and all of a sudden angels are going to sing and everything is going to be perfect. I personally have not found that. I've been with some amazing people. I'm with an amazing woman now. But I don't look at her as I'm dependent on her and that she completes me. She's a force multiplier. She's a source of love that allows me to have an experience that I can dance with, play with, enjoy tremendously.
mm-hmm.
But when we're not getting along or we're having, typical things that couples do, negotiating schedules or events or whatnot, that sometimes disappointment arises, I'm still okay. And she's still okay. And that's all good. But most people don't have that experience. And they're constantly in a state of disappointment, believing that if the other people in their life would simply change and show up better, then their life would get better.
Right.
And God doesn't work that way, or the universe doesn't work that way. It's like until you get to a place where you're okay with you and your life is good enough, then the universe starts showing up and bringing gifts and surprises and pleasantries, and you're smiling more and laughing more and enjoying more of life. So I would really, if nothing else from our podcast today, love for people to consider that they're whole, they're complete, they lack for nothing, that if they're looking for something outside themselves to make their life better, they're going to be disappointed because it just doesn't work that way.
Yep. My favorite one of that type of that I use regularly is everything is always working out for me.
Yeah.
And I love having, I'll do it in ways to continually stimulate my mind around it. So I say, everything is always working out for me. Everything is always working out for me. Everything is always working out for me. And giving different emphasis but to your point about getting people to do those things, I think that the trick and the important part about the science of it is it's that process of myelination. It's that process of creating those new grooves in the brain. You're in the beginning, you're faking it until you make it. You're saying the words and the words don't really connect yet, because what they're reflecting to you is the ways that you're not there yet, because that's how we're trained to respond. That's how we're brought up and groomed. We're trained to look to the negative more than to the positive, I think. And so when you initially start that, the stuff that's in the way of that, I used to tell this to my clients all the time when we would do these declarations, is that when you're doing the work, everything that's in the way of this thing, so your statement, I'm whole and complete and want for nothing, everything that is in your subconscious that does not support that concept has to become conscious and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Or the energy has to dissipate, or it has to be broken down some way, some form, somehow. And in that process is, I think, where the process of the new brain grooves happen, because just saying the words over and over and over again, you're going to memorize them. But that's a form of retention, but it isn't creating the grooves that you're looking for, in the way that what happens is that as soon as you start saying it, it shifts your energy. Because you go from a place of recognizing that right now I'm not feeling so great, and what I know is everything always works out for me. And the first time I say it, because I'm feeling kind of crappy right now, it's like, yeah, whatever, everything works out for me. Yeah, but everything always works out for me. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, but everything always works out for me. And then my mind will all of a sudden bring up a memory. Remember when this worked out for me? And I go, see, everything always works out for me. And now I'm starting momentum. And I don't know if you can feel me, but I'm feeling the energy build in my own system as I'm doing it, because I've been doing it enough and long enough that it's already it's a thing in my brain. I just have to choose to use it now. I have to choose to say, this is the energy I want to spend my time on, not this. So I'm going to choose to focus. Right now I'm going to have a negative moment. I don't need to have one. I don't need to. I don't need to yell at the person in the other car right now. What would serve me better is to calm the heck down and get back to center. So let me pick the thing I know gets me there the fastest. What's going to shift my state like that? Everything always works out for me. And even though I've been doing it for a while, it does take a little time sometimes, because it depends on how much I've indulged the negative energy. If my system is all wound up, it may take 5 minutes for me to unwind a little bit to get to the point where I'm feeling it again.
Sure.
And the spiral starts and my energy starts spinning back up again. And it's amazing when that happens, because it completely obliterates whatever the nonsense was that was trying to take hold earlier. Like obliterates it. Like I'll turn the corner and be half a block away and couldn't even remember what the heck I was fussing about half a block away. Because when I spun my energy up, when I started that focus, because I created those grooves in my brain, my system went boom and lifted, and my vibration shifted from a negatively focused vibration, which is at a downward energy, to a positive uplifting vibration, which doesn't recognize the other one.
Right.
Because they're not in the same ball, they're not even in the same state, they're not in the same ballpark. So there, for me, that's when I know I'm getting better. I'm expanding, I'm growing, because I'm being able to execute that all by myself without having to talk to anybody else, and affect a change in my own energy system that moment, right then and there. And that, to me, is the goal. That's another goal. That's another threshold of better and better and better and better. The better it gets, the better it gets. So if I can keep my attention on the good things, the positive, the uplifting, and I keep reinforcing those, and yeah, I mean, stuff's going to happen, but I don't have to put all my energy there. Then the more I focus on the better, the more better has room to grow. The more I focus on the better, the more the better has room to grow and expand. And it works conversely the other direction. If you want to take the train the other direction, practice focusing on the negative and find out how much of it shows up in your life and how quickly. It works both ways. It's don't take this as a Pollyanna thing, even remotely. You can, the listeners, the people out there in the world taking this on, you can experience that yourself just doing the exercise. And as soon as you feel yourself going down that negative rabbit hole, play with it. Make it as ugly and as negative as you can, and see how miserable you feel in very short order. And then change it and say, wait, I can do something different. Let me pick this one. Let me say everything's always working out for me. Or let me say, what Jeff was saying about I'm whole and complete and have everything I need, and just start working with it and see what happens. When you incorporate those statements with the use of breath, you take it to a whole other level. So there's lots of tools we can talk about here about how to assess and how to support yourself in taking those steps each day, each moment, and not gauging it like it's a scorecard, because it's not. You're going to have those days where they're not great, but it's how you manage your energy through that.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the better. It's not about the thing that happened. It's about how you're managing your energy through it to a better place, to that positive, expanded, whatever you're looking for, that love zone, so to speak.
Getting better. How are we getting better? What we're talking about, all of this fitting in that category of how do we know if we're getting better? Do we want to get better? What does better look like? All these things going through the mill today.
Yeah.
So what we've been talking about, I think, in the last, say, 10, 15 minutes is that third phase or the third model of moving into that spiritual awakening. And what I'd love to see is history would say that you don't have to be 50 for that to happen, that can, we're seeing, I see kids, what I call kids in their mid 20s and early 30s starting to think this way. And I frequently say to them, wow, I can only imagine what my life would look like today had I gotten started when I was your age.
Yeah.
These truths or these core beliefs or these metaphysical, spiritual understandings and practices. But I got started when I got started, and it got me to where I am now.
Yep.
But I think we are seeing a shift take place earlier.
The number of younger people now that I mean, they travel, they seek their joy. They seek out the things that make them feel something other than what they're told they're supposed to be feeling. Whether that's politically, whether that's religious, whether that's relational, whether it's familial, doesn't matter. The desire is there, at least to your point, that I've seen, is just this, they're out seeking their joy. They're out experiencing, and whether they do it the right way really doesn't matter. They're doing it their way and letting it take them to wherever they're inspired to go. And that's the magic, because that's, like you said, I've probably been in my form at it consciously a little bit longer, but it's still that, the path is still ever expanding. There's no end, there's no destination except the next destination. You know what I mean? It's like you can't. It's not going to end. So if you're thinking in terms of what you were talking about, so I get my job and I do my career and I save for my retirement and I retire and my body winds down and I die, and in the 50s I have my midlife crisis, and I buy my sports car and I do whatever I might do around that, and then I realize in my mid 50s what a silly thing that was, and now I'm looking for something larger and greater and better. It doesn't matter when you get there. That's getting better. That's the better part, is realizing there's more, because there is, and realizing there's always more, because there is, as far as our growth and evolution is concerned. As far as, at least from my perspective, it's I don't see a pinnacle, like, oh my gosh, once I get there it'll all be amazing. It's amazing all along the way.
Right.
It's amazing every time I move into a little bit better is even more amazing. For me, for my life, for my experience. And then that energy, you can't help but share that energy. You can't help but want others to have that experience in some form or fashion. And so, like for me with driving, that's where I get to touch people on a regular basis. The service that I get to provide, I get to move people around the planet in a specific area, but I get to move them around to wherever it is they need to move to. And I get to facilitate that. And sometimes I get to facilitate even more than that. depending on the circumstance and the people, and you know, what their needs are, and what, you know, but in that moment, there's that microcosm, that connection, that we both get to be better in this circumstance. And it could just be that I get to be quiet and let them listen to jazz music and sit in the back of my car and be in their own experience. And maybe they haven't had that in a month, and they're only in my car for 20 minutes, but for 20 minutes, they got to be at peace. That's freaking huge. They may not make the connection right away. You know, we're not having a dialogue about it, but from my perspective, that I could create an environment where someone could experience 10 minutes of peace in a world that they haven't necessarily experienced any. And I go, wow, that's pretty freaking cool. I may be making it up. I don't care. It's still freaking cool. It still feels good. It tells a story that makes me feel amazing, and gives me a sense of clarity, of, you know, of connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I mean, that's because now I seek that, you know, which is another component of the whole thing, is that the more you seek to better yourself, the more you create the opportunities for that. So then you got to show up and step in and move that forward. The better it gets, the better it gets. Keep it going. But it enables you to look at things from a much vastly different perspective. I don't know how many people would think that driving a car for Lyft is like very spiritual, but to me, it's been one of the most spiritual experiences I've had in this decade. You know, because it's offered so much to bring clarity and understanding and forward motion to my experience, which then allows me to take it to the next level.
Well, there aren't any missteps, so you're embracing where you are and making the most of it. And
yep.
You know, they say wherever the student is open and ready to learn, the teacher shows up. So
every time
that's happening for you, continuing to happen for you
every time.
I'm still thinking about this elderly gentleman that you gave a ride to, that, you know, is the old generation that some would say was the best, most productive generation that America's ever had. And for producing stuff, that might be true. And for just going to work for work's sake, that might be true. You know, but we come to the planet, we leave the planet the same way, with nothing except for the experiences that we had while we were here.
Yeah.
And what did we learn? What did we teach? Those are some pretty profound things that you could say and use as, were you learning things and teaching things that you could say were making you and the planet a better place, by realizing that none of this physical stuff does matter. It's all completely meaningless. And how do I know that? Because we come here with nothing and we leave with nothing. So if the stuff was important, you'd think that what you could take some of it with you.
Yeah. And you can't, you just get to leave it for people to have to deal with.
And you know all about that recently, don't you?
But but it's even more apropos, because that's really what happens for everybody. You know, I mean, the stuff gets left for other people to deal with. And isn't that an interesting kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's interesting to me that, because it does, in a logical sense, it doesn't make any sense. Let me accumulate all this crap that I can't take with me, but somebody else will have to deal with when I'm gone. Like, I don't understand. Why is that useful?
It's not. And to realize, to me, the biggest eye-opener or aha in all of this is what you were saying earlier, is I always had what I was looking for at every point in my life. There, again, if I lack for nothing ever, I've always had what I was looking for. It was always right in front of me. There's nothing outside of me that is going to complete me. And we spend our whole lives experiencing that until one day we get it. And it's like, okay, well, I still want to have experience. And sometimes I need stuff to have these experiences. But if they don't happen, okay, it's not a big deal. There's going to be something that'll happen. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you absolutely have nothing, then go outside and watch a grasshopper jump and contemplate how in the world does that little insect jump so high? Or watch a bumblebee fly, knowing that science tells us it's not scientifically possible, but they do it anyway. Try to wrap your head around some of those things, or just go smell a flower, or listen to a bird chirp, or watch a worm. How does a worm know how to dig a hole into the ground to save itself from dehydration? And, those don't cost anything, but it'll really give you some perspective on how everything is always working out and everything is just fine as it is. And that we're just here to have these amazing experiences. It's all good, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
It is all good. And the better it gets, the better it gets. So I'll stay on better. I like the better it gets, the better it gets. Because it's really true. And the worse it gets, the worse it gets if you want to focus there.
So for me, if someone would say, well, how do you know you're getting better, Jeff? And I'd say on a daily basis, I'm finding more of the time in my day, I'm content with what is. I still have desires and drives and urges and instincts and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
But I do believe that I'm on a pace to experience those and achieve or accumulate or whatever. As it's going to happen, it happens. And there are no missteps. And I'm on the right path at the right time, at the right pace. There just isn't anything to worry about or be concerned about. Really nothing. And if you do start worrying and get upset about things, you're arguing with reality. And as much of a good debater as I can be, I've never once won an argument with reality, meaning that somehow I got God to change the course of human history or rewind and have a different outcome. That's like only never happened and never will.
Yeah, that's that whole for me the statement is I'm satisfied with now. And that's been a very interesting evolution, because I will find myself, and I've had these, I think I've even had the conversations with you, where I'll have built up a little ball of whatever frustration I may be feeling or whatever discontent I may be feeling, and then I'll start talking about it. And as I'm talking about it, I will simultaneously be aware of the fact that there is absolutely nothing wrong in my life. Nothing. Like, yeah, I have bills to pay. Who doesn't have bills to pay? Yeah, I stubbed my toe. Yeah, but there's nothing, literally, as I'm going, and I don't understand why this isn't happening and why this isn't working and why didn't this come through yet? And I stop and go, I'm healthy. I eat good meals. I have an amazing husband. I live in a great place. I love where I live. I have a car that works. I have all of this amazing stuff in my life, and my life is great. So what is this little ball of stuff? Like, why do I need that? Well, that's the contrast that helps me remember how great my life is. But I'll tell you, 30 years ago, it was the other way around. 30 years ago, this ball was this big, and my understanding of that was this big. So the ball was winning a lot for a long time.
Yeah.
But what moved that forward was more and more focusing into now, more and more spending time focused on positive aspects, more and more finding that my life is always working, and being able to, even in the throes of feeling that little ball of stuff, I can still see the beauty and perfection and feel satisfied at what is where I'm at today, where I'm at this moment right now, for which ties right back to yours, which is I have everything I need right now and I'm in great shape, So it all comes together in the same place, which is really, really cool. And for the for the listeners, for the people out there, it is an evolution, but part of the betterness is knowing that each day you took another step. Doesn't matter how, nobody said the step had to be any particular size. Nobody said the step had to be in any particular direction. Just take the step. The step will lead you to the next thing, the next moment, the next experience, the next feeling, the next whatever. And in that moment, do you feel better? Are you feeling like you're moving? Are you feeling progress? Are you feeling, those are the things that satisfy me the most, is knowing I can look back at my life and go, holy crap, look where I've come over the course of my life. Even in the course of the last 5 years, you know, the person I was 5 years ago is not even close to the person I am now. And he was pretty cool then, but it got really cool and getting cooler, you know? So yeah, love that idea. And it doesn't have to come from ego. It doesn't have to come from self-aggrandizement. It just comes from acknowledging, like you said, the reality is I'm not creating a lot of negative stuff in my world. So apparently I'm managing my vibration well. That's a pretty cool thing. You know, it doesn't mean I'm not going to have things to show up to deal with, but it doesn't mean they're negative. It just means they're things to deal with because they're taking me to my next thing, which is my next place of better, you know, whatever that is, because it equates all the way across life. So it's good stuff.
Well, you think we're there?
I do. Do you think we're there?
Yes. We have dove deep enough today. Our exploration of the truth about being better or getting better or what better might look like. I really enjoy the process, Jim, of just coming up with a topic or a question or an idea and not even feeling like, we have to have the answers. We have to, solve a puzzle or an equation or something, but just that we're willing to roll up our sleeves and dive in and chew on it a little bit and see what we come up with. And the formula seems to work.
Works well.
It feels good. It feels right.
I agree.
It feels, I think one of the Sounds True is a publisher of a lot of works. And to me, this work that we're doing, it just sounds true. And if people can listen to this stuff and constantly use their intuitive notions and their spiritual awareness and just ask, is the stuff they're talking about, does it sound true? And that's what we're trying to work toward, of establishing a better baseline of, if we can operate from core truths, dispel the distortions of truth that we call lies, you tend to live a little cleaner, being more content, more at peace, and realize that the stuff that used to upset you and disappoint you doesn't really matter. Yeah. And you'll smile more and sleep better.
Woohoo. All that's good stuff. So remember to, when you find yourself confronted by that negative space, remember to find that statement that works for you, something that can help create a new momentum in your energy that helps you to become better in that moment. Because it's every moment that you allow yourself to become better that you feel better. And that as you feel better, you create better. And then as you create better, you live better and you share better. And it just perpetuates itself. So give yourself permission to play with it, explore it, have fun with it. Let it take you to that place of feeling good and feeling better, and finding that little bit. Maybe, the first week you only notice that you come into a little bit of joy, or you come into a little bit of peace. Is it more than you had last week? Then you've moved the needle of better. I'm going to use that damn analogy. But guys, more power to you. Come check us out. www.adventuresintruthpodcast.com. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere. And we want to connect with you, and we want to hear from you, and we want to engage with you. So don't be afraid to send us a comment, shoot us a note, send us an email. We'd love to engage with you. So thanks for joining us on the Adventures in Truth podcast today. Had a blast, Jeff. Good to see you always. Great talking. Looking forward to the next one.
You too, Jim. Many blessings, and blessings to our listeners.